Hi, and welcome to the New York Times The Daily Podcast. I am your host, Adolf Hitler.
I think you've done that before.
Fuck!
I think you did that bit before.
I'm running out, man. I'm running out. See, the thing is, it doesn't
You're the
seem...
only person I know that listens to that podcast.
I don't listen to the podcast. I listen to it sometimes.
Listeners, Brace listens to that podcast.
I don't listen to any other podcast, Liz, except for one. Racial Jakes. I just want to see what
Stop trying to make this bit happen. Oh
Let me make the Racial Jake bit happen, please.
Fine, do it.
I'm not doing the bit. I was just saying I listen to this podcast.
No, just do the bit. Get it out.
Hey, I'm Racial Jake, and welcome to... the joke is, what if, Racial Jake had a podcast? Like a racist guy named Jake. I don't want to do anything further than that. I feel like that would get us in some hot water.
I'm glad that we really let this one go.
What I was saying is that I listen to his podcast, not that I do his podcast.
Had some good judgment here with saying maybe we don't go with this bit because it's not that funny because the whole bit is just the name.
Racial Jake?
How come you're smiling then? How come you're smiling? Both of you are smiling.
Yeah, because I'm looking at your dumb face.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for saying my face makes you smile.
Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. Come here. Jeffrey Epstein.
I hope you're still recording. They're both laughing about Racial Jake right now. I don't like Racial Jake. I like Racial Jake less than I like Michael Barbadoro. I'm just saying. Don't fucking do this to me. I'm
sorry.
Michael, it's like the non-Italian version of Michelle. Barbadoro, which does sound Italian. Barbadoro.
All right.
Well, fuck him. My name is Brace.
And I'm Liz. Hello. Welcome to TrueAnon.
Of course, we are joined by producer Young Chomsky. What's up?
Remember that?
They brought it back recently. They did. They brought it back, but those guys are in quarantine. Yeah.
No, they didn't.
They swear to God they did. I swear to God.
No, that was such a fun bit, and then they gotta ruin it by making it new again. It's no, just leave it. Just leave it. Let us have our little retro movement.
Well, they're all CGI now because, most of them are dead from coronavirus. No, they're not CGI. It's real, but it sucks. It wasn't funny. It was they did the "what's up" bit, and then at the end they're like,
"I've got a handful of references, and they got to go ahead and ruin one right off the bat."
I know that. Well, that's why I was watching YouTube in the first place to figure out more references, which did not work. I didn't find really anything good. YouTube is probably the worst medium known to. I say this as a podcaster with full acknowledgement that I'm a fucking loser. YouTube is worse.
Yes. It's very dorky. I don't understand the aesthetic. I think we've talked about it. They're what? Everyone's oh, it's my face, but I'm a cartoon. But we're here to talk about why being white is problematic.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Crazy cartoon eyes. Wow, white supremacy. And
then
everyone needs to chill the fuck out, okay?
Oh, I don't know what kind of YouTube you're watching, but I watch 14-hour streams of someone playing a video game in order to connect. It's like Heart of Darkness style. By the end of it, I'm in a loincloth covered in animal blood.
Yeah, that's the you're going into Heart of the Doomer.
Yeah. Well, you know how every episode we start and you're like, Brace, how come you didn't contribute to the notes? It's I've been watching video game streams for 14 hours every day since our last episode. Well, usually I make up something when I tell you I have kidney problems or stomach cancer.
None of this is true, listeners. Brace is a diligent note taker.
I am a diligent. In fact, I'm taking notes on both of your guys'.
Our little nerdy boy.
I'm taking notes on both of your guys' behavior right now, and I gotta say, Liz, you are not doing very well.
Oh.
I'm also sketching.
I'm doing just fine. Okay, let's we actually do have an episode today. It's not just us having our classic witty banter. Although I do enjoy that.
We are returning to form. We are talking about one and only Jeffrey Edward Epstein.
Yes, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, we have a couple things. We've got some news to go over. And then later on in the podcast, we are going to discuss, because a lot of people have been asking us, we're going to discuss the brand new premiere, lights, camera, action, woo, woo, woo. The Netflix documentary series, Jeffrey Epstein.
Filthy rich.
Yes. Also, I want to say this now before I forget. If anyone out there has cucumber or mango jewel pods, please DM the podcast. I've been meaning to say that for several episodes now, and I have been forgetting. So the first piece of I don't understand what's so funny about that. They're illegal. I mean, I don't want. No, it's listen. If this is illegal, I don't want them. But I know I will. If you send them to me, I'll throw them in the bay. So the first thing we have is
My God, Brace.
this will not be news to our dedicated fan base who know the ins and out of the Jeffrey Epstein story. But a new book is out, or is about to be out, saying with the extraordinary claim that Bill Clinton had an affair with Ghislaine Maxwell. I say extraordinary because it's extraordinary that we're not the source for this.
Yeah, I think what you mean to say is ordinary, because
Well,
as you rightly
extraordinary.
point out, we already talked about this
A million times. It's one of my
a
favorite
million
facts.
times. It was in all the tabloids in like the 90s and the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. We didn't get a book deal, by the
Decades
way.
before my birth.
Anyway,
this is
so the book is called A Convenient Death, The Mysterious Demise of Jeffrey Epstein by Alana Goodman and Daniel Halper, which is out June 2nd. And yes, we will be reading that. And the New York Post published an excerpt from the new book, which basically just says what Brace just said. Bill and Ghislaine were getting it on, which is also kind of a gross way to put it. A source who witnessed the relationship said in an interview. I love how they said witness the relationship. It's like, did you witness that part of the relationship?
Yeah.
That's why he was around Epstein, to be with her. The source explained that reporters had been missing the point about the Clinton-Epstein relationship by focusing on Epstein's sex crimes. Clinton's stupid, but not an idiot, the source says, dismissing the idea the ex-president was sexually involved with children.
Now, I just want to make a point real quick. I hate it when people say that he's like dumb, but he's not stupid, or like he's stupid, but he's not an idiot. All of those words mean the same fucking thing.
Yeah, man.
Like you can't. Oh, I'm the smart moron. Well, actually, I kind of am
It's
a
like,
smart
hey,
moron, but like,
you ever heard of a thesaurus? Hey, look up thesaurus in the dictionary.
classic. Or just say, he's dumb, but he's not that dumb. There used to be a job at newspapers, there probably still is, that I've never looked into, but I've always enjoyed the name of, which is Rewrite Man.
That's a great name. They should make a movie like that, like Repo Man, but
Exactly.
Rewrite Man.
Riri Man.
I don't think that's right.
Well, rewrite. So yeah, I would have just said he's stupid, but not dumb. There is no mention in this article of I'm not going to say this right. Close Clinton confidant Doug Band,
the triple C.
Doug Band, who was really Bill's like main liaison with the Epstein nexus, and who often is basically if Doug Band is seen with a woman multiple times, that means that he's acting as a proxy for Bill Clinton. That happened with Lewinsky, and that happened with Ghislaine. Bill Clinton, however, himself has been seen out with Ghislaine before. They were we ran into them at Nello's.
At what?
I don't know. All right, so
It sounded right. I liked it. It sounded like a very like Y2K, like Upper East Side eatery. They were always called eateries back then.
No, they really did get seen at a place called Nello. Oh, Nello, excuse me. At Madison Avenue Italian staple.
I thought you were talking about Ello.
Elo, yes, they were the only two people on Elo. And I think they went to a gala again, and of course Epstein and Clinton himself. I mean, that's just Clinton and Ghislaine. Epstein and Clinton also hung out a multitude of times. Or wherever Epstein was, Ms. Maxwell was never far behind.
Yeah, so this piece is a little, I don't know. Like we said, it's like, yeah, we already know about this. We'll probably still read the book, but I did like this little detail, which I found pretty funny. On July 31st, 2010, Maxwell was among the few guests to attend Chelsea Clinton's wedding, which of course we know. The auspicious event followed an embarrassing incident for Maxwell. Only a few months earlier, while attending the Clinton Global Initiative in New York City at the end of an Indian summer in September 2009, I don't know why they included that detail.
It was a hot summer.
Yeah. A process server walked through the packed lobby of the Sheraton Hotel and served Ghislaine Maxwell papers for a deposition. Maxwell was huddled in a small group talking to other guests as the server approached her. He called out her name, and with so many people surrounding her, Maxwell was unsuspecting. She confirmed her identity, and he served her notice. The deposition was in relation to to Epstein's sexual abuse case. Ironically, photographs of Maxwell taken by a private investigator who accompanied the process server showed Maxwell receiving notice while standing beneath a human trafficking banner. Human trafficking was the conference's theme at the 2009 Clinton Global Initiative.
To be clear, it was kind of like a how-to sort of thing. Like there was various TED Talks by Malcolm Gladwell, Jeffrey Epstein himself, Ghislaine, about the most effective ways to human traffic.
Yes, Kel Ironico.
But yeah, no, that is. I would if the private investigator who took those pictures is out there, and if by some horrible coincidence he's listening to this, I will pay you basically any amount of money for a picture of Ghislaine Maxwell being served underneath that banner.
And
Just to
jewel
put that out
pods.
there. Oh, also, if you have jewel pods, please also send those to us.
So there's other news with Ghislaine in the news. Messed that one up.
Correct.
So apparently, court agrees to delay testimony of Jeffrey Epstein confidant Ghislaine Maxwell in a civil suit. So in November of last year, Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer's younger sister, who's also a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, filed a lawsuit against Ghislaine and Epstein's estate. And they've been basically attempting to compel Ghislaine to testify in the civil case. And Maxwell's attorneys famously, of course, have been really just doing everything they can to push against that.
Oh yeah, they've been hedging a lot on ever getting to a point where Maxwell herself ever has to appear in court. And I predict that will just basically go on indefinitely. There's I think the legal route to get to Maxwell, especially if it's like a civil suit, is basically going to be fruitless because there's a lot to do. There's a lot to the Maxwell and her lawyers sort of saga here. But basically, to sum it up, she's hiding behind them, and they're claiming that they don't know where she is. And I don't think that there's any way they can be compelled to actually say where she is. So I think that like she's not going to reappear just to make a court appearance.
Yeah, the hunt for Ghislaine continues. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the judge basically said, okay, fine. We're going to wait and halt the deposition request. Or we're going to basically allow her not to respond to the deposition.
Yeah.
But not forever, but we're going to revisit it in the middle of June. And they kind of cited the pending settlements with the estate to the victims, to the victims fund, as justification for halting the deposition.
So the judge also cited Jeffrey Epstein's the ongoing federal criminal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. But from everything that I've heard, I do not think that's going to get very far.
Yeah, I mean, I have a question kind of about that because it seems like very convenient legal justification to kind of have this No, we're continuing to look into the alleged co-conspirators, which no one knows because they haven't had to reveal their names, right? And the feds can kind of just like have this hanging over any pending legal action, like for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
As a kind of justification to halt any other civil action.
So I'm not a lawyer anymore due to a 1993 incident where I was able to get O.J. Simpson acquitted, but with my coworker Alan. But I do. I feel like that. Even speaking of Dershowitz, he could also use this justification in the civil suits that are ongoing with him. Those things are a mess of legality, so I don't really know exactly where they're at right now. But presumably, like any of the unindicted co-conspirators can basically use the fact that there's this ongoing criminal investigation to block basically civil suits going forward. Again, not a lawyer, don't know for sure, but that's what it seems like to me from this.
Yeah, it just seems very convenient, which is very frustrating.
Extremely. Especially when you consider that from all we've heard, the FBI isn't even really looking for Ghislaine.
Yeah, I mean, I do keep kind of fantasizing because do you remember what Maria said about like how dramatic and theatrical Ghislaine was?
Yes, absolutely.
So I do kind of keep fantasizing about like what would be the most dramatic and fantastic way for her to like reemerge in public.
I don't know. I've always sort of pictured it happening at like an airport press conference. But I feel like she has so few allies right now. Like, it's not even like Prince Andrew style where you at least have like some automatic support that, I don't know, or maybe reemerging in a submarine. We do know that she can pilot them.
I wish she was like more diabolical and just started like kind of slowly popping up in like she was in one of those like spring break Corona lake,
like in the background of
photos.
something.
Yeah, and you're like, is that Ghislaine in the mask? But you can't tell. And then it's like, is that Ghislaine in Minneapolis? Like, it's just like every like public event, you're like trying to figure out where she is.
Well, we have basically heard that she's essentially on every continent. No, she has not been reported in being in Africa or East Asia, but she has been said to be in Israel, in the Midwest, being protected by Navy SEALs and being shunted from house to house. There was that one guy in Russia that was a very confusing story that he had text messages. He basically tracked her to a place in Brazil. Although that seemed very strange to me, that whole sort of saga right there. So what that is basically to say is nobody knows where she is. And she could be, I have a feeling if she's anywhere, it's probably Israel. Especially because
really, I think she's like in the UK.
That would be my second guess. Yeah, because both of those places she has pretty strong base of allies. Israel, though, I know that they have some weird extradition shit with the U.S. For instance, American pedophiles will go to Israel to live and without fear of extradition. There was like a 60 Minutes documentary about it at some point.
Yeah, we should mention though, or remind our listeners that a couple of people we've talked to who are familiar either with comrades of Ghislaine Maxwell or people involved in the pending case say that the feds are like well aware of where she is and that she has been in contact with them.
Yeah, that makes. I'm saying like they're not looking for her, as in like I don't think there's a giant manhunt out for her. They either aren't looking or they know exactly where she is. Which I can't imagine they don't know where she is. I mean, they know basically everything. So next up, we have a kind of goofy story, but with some sinister sort of undertones there. There is a website has been set up to find the children of Jeffrey Epstein, who are the illegitimate children of Mr. Epstein. I have looked at this website.
You have?
It is, yeah, it's extremely strange. Let me get it up on the on the old screen here. But
So this was created by a DNA company, basically to find any possible heirs. And they say they've heard from as many as 130 people claiming to be the convicted pedophile's child.
yeah, so the website is called EpsteinHeirs.com. It is set up by Morse Genealogical Services, LLC. It says legal notice. I have no idea how any of this is legal or if it is. The website, I will tell you, does not look like the most trustworthy thing. Morse Genealogical Service locates missing and unknown heirs to estates worldwide. Legal notice. Unknown children of the late Jeffrey Epstein contact us. And there is a phone number, 800-410-4347, which...
But we're going to bleep that out. It'll just be 555-55555.
Well, it's an 800 number, so I don't think we have to.
I don't know.
It also says, notice
Just making jokes
unknown
over
children
here.
of the late Jeffrey Epstein with a stock photo of a small child with a bunch of question marks, very wide-eyed, pointing downwards for some reason.
What?
Yes, it is very strange. If you believe you may have given birth to a child fathered by the late Jeffrey Epstein, who recently committed suicide, or that he may have been your biological father, please contact us immediately without delay, 2 exclamation points. And then it has a bunch of, it says in the news, and then it has a bunch of instances where this was featured in a news article. So very strange. But
It's like, just reminds me of the, ambulance chaser billboards.
yeah, oh yeah, I'm sure it's exactly something like that. Like they're banking on getting somebody. I mean, it's a very small chance. In fact, I think there's basically no chance of there being a child.
Yeah.
But there is they're probably taking a bet that if they actually get someone who does happen to be his child, that they'll get a cut of that money. And
absolutely.
2 things.
If you or a loved one have been bothered by Jeffrey Epstein, please contact.
There is a couple things that make me feel like this is insanely unlikely. One is that he had set up his eugenics ranch in New Mexico, where he had planned to father, basically an infinite amount of children using young models.
But he never got that off the ground.
Never got it off the ground. And then there was also sort of this excerpt from Virginia Roberts' memoir, or Virginia Jeffries' memoir, her unpublished memoir that was included in evidence. And I think the fact that they asked her to do this makes me feel it's very unlikely that he has a child that he does not know about.
So this is what she writes. Jeffrey sat next to me and put his hand on my back and looked at me with a certain kind of sincerity I hadn't seen in him before. I want to first of all tell you that over the last few years you have shown me the kind of devotion and loyalty that I believe is rare to find among people these days, qualities I hold that high in regard. Bewildered by the whole scenario, I just nodded every time he paused, trying to grasp what his intentions were getting at. He continued to praise my nature, saying, I hope you know my appreciation for you embracing of my lifestyle. You have been achieving a name for yourself among the friends I have introduced you to. Everybody says basically the same thing about you, the same thing I believe. You are a delightfully funny girl who has developed into a mature, graceful young woman, and I can think of nobody else I'd rather have a child with than you. And just like that, he created a whole new dilemma for me to face. In utter shock from the completely unexpected proposition, and before I could even think of anything to respond with, Ghislaine made the finishing touches with the business end of the deal, starting with the pros before the cons. You would have round-the-clock nannies to help you. Jeffrey would pay for a mansion of your choice in either Palm Beach or New York, and as if the drum rolls were beckoning, and you would have a hefty monthly allowance from Jeffrey's bank account. Astonished at their first offers, I nearly took the bait. Then she continued to finish the terms of our pre-agreement with, but you would have to travel with the child where and when Jeffrey wanted you to be, and most importantly, you would have to sign a contract stating that Jeffrey and you are not monogamous and that the child would belong in Jeffrey's custody in the event of a falling out between the two of you. She kind of threw that last one in there quickly, as if she could get away with me not hearing that I would basically have to relinquish the rights to my own flesh and blood and surrender them to a life of servitude and abuse with these people. My maternal alarm bells went off straight away, and I already knew my answer. No way I could do that to any poor baby. God only knew what those monsters had in store for me, let alone a baby. But it was an instant reaction that saved me. I don't know, guys. I mean, I'm really young, and I never even really thought about having kids yet. Wow, I just don't know. I slicked my hand through my hair nervously and took in a silent breath. I had to go beyond what I was truly feeling and give the feeling that I had never let them down. Putting an eager smile on my face and sucking up my gut's intuition, I told them, you know what? Let me get my certificates and massage and have some time to prepare for this and get healthy. Then next year we'll all think about having a baby together. It was crazy to even hear me say this out loud. From the expression on their faces, I had fulfilled their wishes.
So as we can see, Epstein, for whatever reason, wanted to have a baby in these pretty, I mean, you could say peculiar circumstances, right? And so because he was so sort of controlling and meticulous and methodical in the way that he interacted with the world, and especially interacted with the world like this, when it would come to like a child or something, I think it's exceedingly unlikely that he has a child that is not known.
Yeah. Ugh, that just...
I know. When I will say, I think someone should publish that memoir. I think she was blocked from doing it for somehow legally, or maybe she was afraid of. I can't remember what the exact reason she never published it was. But I think it's about 130 pages, at least the pertinent parts of the court case. And I've been slowly reading it this past week. So, anyways, I do not think that he has a child out there.
Okay. So first, before we get into this, we should say, I guess, spoiler alert. I don't know what there is to spoil, because if you're listening to our podcast, you probably know about Jeffrey Epstein.
I will say,
but I feel, are you supposed to say that?
Aren't
you supposed to say that before you talk about movies or stuff?
Well, I did want to put a disclaimer here that I don't watch movies. Like, listeners to TrueAnon will know that I've mentioned this several times. I basically never watch things. And I'm not saying that to be like a guy who's like, I don't even fucking own a TV. I do own a TV. I just fall asleep when I put movies on. And so I never watch them because I don't want to go to sleep. And so I am not a movie reviewer. Liz is like smart, so she can probably do this. But I am... I rarely watch documentaries, or true crime documentaries, rather.
I don't actually watch any true crime. I really don't get into it.
Yeah. I watch fake crime movies, which is like CSI and stuff. Those are called fake crime documentaries.
Okay, so we got the spoiler alert or whatever for all you whiny baby bitches out there. Okay, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. So this is a 4-part docu-series that premiered on Netflix, that is the flicks for the net, on May 27th, just yesterday. Curiously, premiered, now this is my conspiracy theory, they uploaded it or premiered it or whatever the same day as Uncut Gems, I think.
Oh.
So people weren't paying attention. A little bury the news story.
I think they were trying to balance out the Jews. Like we have this movie about Jeffrey Epstein, who just is not a credit to me and our producers race. But then you do have this really wonderful story about one of us who really does us proud. And it's
Did you see Uncut Gems?
No, I fell asleep in the first 10 minutes. Filthy Rich, baby. It has pretty good reviews, I think, right?
Apparently 77% fresh on the tomato meter, which is apparently a thing. Although some reviewers, I liked these, they didn't like it. They gave it a splat. That's what I call it.
I don't like I will say, I don't like the fresh. I do like the splat.
Splat. You know, it's like
I
the
like
green,
the
like,
splat. Yeah.
This is, in the end, I don't feel like I learned anything from Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, beyond horrific details from RogerEbert.com reviewer Brian Tallarico. First of all, buddy, there's some pretty horrific details in there. I'm kind of happy you learned them.
Yeah. Yeah. But also, it's weird that you write for Roger Ebert's dead, man.
Well, his website lives on.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's another one there's never a unifying theme or reason that helps a viewer understand why the Epstein saga still merits 4 hours of our undivided attention. From the Washington Post critic Hank Stuver. I think he should have put actually, to tell you the truth, I didn't read the full review, but he probably should have put a disclaimer in his own review that his boss, Jeffrey Bezos, was friends with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, also, hey, Mr. Hank.
Mm-hmm.
One, stupid name. Two,
I like the name Hank.
it's actually a nice name, but let me have
Pretty
this.
cool. Cowboy name.
Okay. Number two, actually, the Epstein saga merits about 73 hours of your undivided attention in podcast form.
True. It just maybe doesn't perform well as a movie. And you think about
Yeah.
that? How come you don't have podcast reviewers? Well,
Yeah,
so who made this fucking documentary, baby? Tell me about it.
So this is woman, Lisa Bryant, who I think this is her directorial debut. I'm really pronouncing things extra funny today.
Yeah.
So she was the producer on a bunch of different like TV miniseries that were kind of like true crime based. So it seems to be kind of her like genre. And it was also, this is actually funny, it was co-produced with Joe Berlinger, who actually directed Metallica's Some Kind of Monster.
The scariest horror film ever made. I'm telling you.
So you've seen that, right?
Oh, I've seen it many times. Yes.
Dude, I hate when people say this, but it owns.
Oh, it's one
so
of the most,
good.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
If you haven't seen Some Kind of Monster or Jeffrey Epstein Filthy Rich, go watch Some Kind of Monster.
So I got to give Berlinger credit because Some Kind of Monster is the guy, when those guys were making that movie, must have every single night just like collapsed into laughter when they got off set or whatever. Because it's incredible. It's an incredible movie about some adult children going to therapy and letting their therapist write lyrics for their heavy metal album.
So you, like you said, this is her first.
Hold on. We didn't mention this yet. His production company is called Third Eye Motion Picture Company. Just wanted to put that out there.
I don't like that.
I feel like they do owe me some royalties for that. I did invent the phrase third eye, but go on.
Well, okay, so like we said, this is her first film, directorial debut. It's based on, but this is the funny thing, okay? So it's based on a book by James Patterson. Now, Brace, can you tell us a little bit about James Patterson?
So James Patterson is, well, first of all, the book he wrote is called Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. It was put out, I can't remember how many years ago. I think it was like 2009 or something, 2010. I don't remember. I read the book. It's a very breezy read. It's like, you know how it's like that airport book shit where it's like the font is really big and it's like spaced pretty far apart to make it take up more area, which is a great scam. But it glosses over some of the more it basically focuses on his like court case in Florida. But it does gloss over some of his bigger connections, or rather, like, it refuses to sort of entertain what they might mean. He dismisses Bill Clinton as having been involved in any untoward way, which, judging from the news earlier, probably not true. And basically, if you know much about Jeffrey Epstein, if you know even like a little bit, this won't teach you a whole lot. The only thing that I found out from reading this that I hadn't found out from before, that I didn't know from before, was that Jeffrey Epstein was racist. That he, I'm serious, that he, one of these girls once brought a African American child over to his house, and he sent her back and then really forcefully said, "Don't ever fucking do that again." So that makes sense. I have not seen him with basically anybody but skinny young white girls. But that's not about James Patterson. About James Patterson is that he also wrote a book with Bill Clinton called "The President is Missing," and he has a new book coming out very soon with Bill Clinton called, get this, "The President's Daughter." And just let me read you the tagline or the synopsis. Michael Keating is a former Navy SEAL, which, by the way, this podcast fucking hates. We are against Navy SEALs 100%. Michael Keating is a former Navy SEAL and a former president of the United States, now relocated to rural New Hampshire after a brave but ill-fated military mission cost him a second term. All he wants to is to sink into anonymity with his family and a Secret Service detail. But when he's briefed on an imminent threat against his daughter, Keating's SEAL training may prove more essential than all the power, connections, and political acumen he gained as the president.
That sounds awesome.
It's a weird book for a president and an ex-president who is not a Navy SEAL to write. Like if Bill
James
Clinton
Patterson writes all those. He writes all those crazy like mystery. I mean, when you said airport book, like you will recognize this man from the airport.
Absolutely. And the word on the street is that he actually doesn't write his books. That
Sure, I don't.
Sort of just
yeah,
a brand
yeah.
like Tom Clancy, or maybe Tom Clancy. I've never read any of these books.
Or John Updike. Just kidding. That's a joke.
I don't know who that is.
I'm
just kidding. Yes, I do. So the
man, we are really. This is jokey day on TrueAnon.
I know. I drank some sugar before we were going to do this.
I didn't at all. I'm
full
all.
of giggles.
I'm au natural, baby.
Because they cannot see you grooving like that. Only we can see you. So I watched this whole thing, which I gotta say,
yeah, me too,
was difficult for me, not because of the content, but because of my movie watching. What are your initial reactions? Like, what are you thinking first off the bat after you watched it?
My initial reactions are it was really difficult listening to the victims.
Yeah.
And I do think that the like we're going to get into a lot, or I think we'll get into some gentle ribbing of some of the kind of like funnier aspects of the whole series or the stranger aspects. But I do want to put a like important point here is like they really, and I think it's commendable. They really, really put the young women at the center of the story.
Yeah.
And you hear directly from them, and it's really difficult. And a lot of victims that I had never heard before. Yeah, like I had to like, whatever. I'm not gonna lie, like I had to pause it, and I was like overwhelmed, and I had to take a minute. It's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I will say like that's something that this was not the documentary I would have made, but I'm not necessarily mad that these people made this documentary. I'm not mad at all that these people made this documentary, because I do think that like if it does bring something like that's useful, it is, well, first of all, sort of telling people about this in the first place, but more that it shows the victims and it allows them essentially a chance to talk about sort of what happened. I do think it's like, just after our interview with Maria Farmer, I do think it's sort of strange. Like, I'm curious as to like what their full interviews were. And I know this probably is not of general, I know this of course is not of general interest, but I'd really like to basically see the full interviews that they did with people and like let them tell their stories in full. Cause I think that's something I really got a lot out of our being able to interview a victim was to hear it from basically start to finish.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of strange line that they kind of, I don't know, like try to walk, where it's like they want to paint him, or it seems like, at least in the first couple episodes, they really like go heavy on him being like singularly manipulative in a really like classic abuser way.
Yeah.
But also in the very like banal, I don't know, at least for me, and I don't know, maybe this is like because so much of what the victims were recounting didn't see or didn't. There were very few stories in the initial episodes that were extraordinary. And by that, I mean, there was stuff that just sounded like that is, I think a lot of young women will watch and will be very familiar to them. And
Like,
which is an
what
upsetting
kind of
thing
stuff?
to say. I mean, I don't even mean the specifics, but I just mean the kind
general
of
attitude.
like the attitudes and the tactics, you know, the idea of like when you're a young girl who has low self-esteem, who has never thought of yourself as anything, who is poor, and an older gentleman with power is kind to you and takes interest in you and says nice things to you, and those are the first times you've ever heard them.
Yeah.
That alone is both incredibly like powerful and also banal at the same time, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I see what you're saying. Like, these are pretty common tactics to, like, I mean, that is why, like, people obviously tend to prey on, you know, lower income people and people that are less likely to have had like a super, you know, cohesive, supportive home, or to be, you know, told that they're loved by their parents or whatever all the time. I mean, not necessarily less likely, but, you know, in their sort of gamble on the situation. And so, yeah, that does seem like that would be not incredibly extraordinary. I mean, they talk about, you mentioned, like, they talk about Epstein as Svengali, and that is true. Like, they do mention several, like, of the really strange details about him. And then they kind of, like, don't go into them, and they're like, well, he just, you know, he was able to work at the Dalton School without a degree. And then kind of don't, like, pause on that and be like, this is incredibly strange, because that is a really weird detail. And then they talk about his transition to Bear Stearns and how, like, he was able to talk his way out of some trouble there. And then, like, you know, onwards and onwards and onwards. But they never really stop and, like, show, like, this is extraordinary. Right? Like, this is not, like, a normal trajectory for anybody, no matter how smart they are.
Yeah, that's like sort of a thread throughout. I mean, I think the last two episodes almost contradict the first two in this way. I wonder what you think, because it seems like in the first two, they're really building this like psychological profile where it's like, okay, like you say, he's this Svengali. He needs these massages. He is like manipulative to these young girls. He gets that, you know, they start calling it, you know, they characterize it as a sexual Ponzi scheme. And we can get into like some of the problematics there. But, and then the second episode really focuses on a lot of the financial stuff. Yeah. And it's very weird. So they characterize him as just like this ingenious salesman. And like basically it's like he lied his way into Dalton. He lied his way into Bear Stearns. And then they have Stephen Hoffenberg on.
They do.
Who, by the way, okay, I don't know if our listeners know who Stephen Hoffenberg is. Maybe our older listeners. He's a very famous CEO and or former CEO, because he presided over the Towers like fucking Ponzi scheme that he like basically robbed people of like $500 million in the 90s. And I guess Epstein was advising or working at Towers at the time. And it's super weird to have Hoffenberg on as some kind of like fucking witness.
Yeah.
To be like a personality.
Unreliable.
It's just very strange to have this person on as a character witness who is, you know, a criminal and kind of like basically, you know, paint Epstein as, you know, uniquely able to control and manipulate people. And he almost, I mean, he basically tries to kind of blame the Tower scheme on Jeffrey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know, when Hoffenberg was talking, I was getting this like real you could tell he was very excited to be in the documentary. And that he kind of wanted to place himself at like the center of at least some of this, even if it's like a center of a really bad thing. But like, he does seem to me kind of like a publicity hound. I mean, obviously he's a terrible fucking person, robbed people blind. But yeah, I thought that was strange, and there's no real like. I mean, the truth is nobody really knows how Epstein got all his money, you know, and they spend more time on Hoffenberg than they do on Wexner.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's very weird. Okay, one, we know that Epstein was hired at Dalton by
Bill Barr's fucking dad, Donald Barr, which is, by the way, never mentioned, even though Bill Barr is mentioned a few times.
Yes, so that's never mentioned. So in this entire conversation about him, quote unquote, lying about his credentials to get into Dalton, it's never mentioned that a former OSS agent whose son is now in charge of the investigation into his death is the one who hired him. And the second thing that's very weird is that they basically paint Wexner as a victim of Epstein's like insane ability to manipulate people.
Well, the one sort of like that I found that incredibly strange, especially as they opened with Maria Farmer. And, listeners to this podcast will know that Maria Farmer's story heavily involves Leslie Wexner's house, right? Like her like assault from Epstein took place at his mansion, right? And that she's had problems with Wexner since then. And that longtime, Epstein watchers will know that basically Epstein.
I like that.
Wepstein.
That's what the tabloids should call the couple.
That Epstein and Wexner were basically, inseparable, at least financially. And it's never explained clearly why Leslie Wexner invests so heavily in Epstein. It is implied. They do put in a clip of I believe a reporter from the Columbus Free Dispatch, I think it's called, who says that, and this part is sort of given some gravity. He says that Epstein was referred to as Leslie Wexner's boyfriend.
I was going to make a joke about how we've heard it's very heavily implied that they were inseparable in other ways. Yeah,
we have heard that from multiple people that Epstein and Wexner was a little bit of an item. I mean, certainly there are long-standing rumors surrounding Leslie Wexner's sexuality and specifically a predilection for very young men, although Epstein would definitely not fall into that category, so who fucking knows. But that still doesn't ring true to me. I mean, again, this is rather unscientific, although my gut is often correct. It doesn't it rings false to me. Like that would lead to him basically giving Epstein unlimited access to his money, right?
Yeah, so they include a clip in there that I had never seen. I will give them credit. There's a lot of footage in here that I had never seen, which was very cool. But they had it was from some speech that Wexner gave on September 10th, 2019.
Yeah, I think it was the shareholder speech.
Okay. And he says, I've been taken advantage of by someone who was so sick, so cunning, so depraved. It's something that I'm even embarrassed that I was even close to. And it's like the film basically softly suggests that Epstein was manipulating his relationship with Wexner in order to approach women and embezzle money. Yeah. And I just find that to be completely unsatisfactory as an explanation.
I mean, as far as we know, Epstein never worked a day in his life after leaving firms on Wall Street. From basically countless testimony, Epstein never worked. I mean, it'd be pretty hard to work if you're spending, a considerable amount of your time engaging in human trafficking, which, kind of leads you to think, what was he doing for money? And to be honest, the explanation that the film doesn't really try to give an explanation for it.
No, it doesn't.
I have sort of opinions on that because, this is a little more extraordinary than a true crime case. Right.
Yeah, I think the true crime, I understand why they take the true crime approach because they are centering the victims. And I commend them for that. I really do. But then because it's the true crime model, they kind of inevitably fall into this trap of then they have to kind of psychologize the quote unquote serial rapist, which is usually the stand-in in the true crime, right? Although I don't think that is even like appropriate for the scale of the Epstein saga. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so it's like a really bizarre tension to me of like, oh, he was this, Svengali abuser, manipulator, Wall Street, women, oh my God, mystery man, politician, whatever. That just doesn't really go anywhere because then we get to episode 3 and 4 and the story takes off in a totally different direction. And so it's like they almost try, because this is obviously their wheelhouse of like true crime, which by the way is not our wheelhouse. It's like they were trying to like fit it into some kind of like cookie cutter. This is how we do these miniseries.
Yeah.
But this
Very
story
Netflix-like.
doesn't. Yeah, it just does. It isn't appropriate for that because there's too much. There's just a lot of not just loose ends, but a lot of angles to explore.
I mean, the thing is, like, you can look at this crime at, like, you know, his nexus or whatever, his crime as an ecosystem in itself. But then you really, if in order to get like a much more, I think, appropriate look at it, you have to pull back and see that Epstein and what he did existed in an ecosystem, that he's a part of that ecosystem. He is not just like the whole universe in and of itself.
They try to do that in episode 3 and 4, but I don't think it's very successful because I would imagine that they ran into some legal, or at least like some fear of legal ramifications or whatever, because they dipped their toes in some things. Like you say, the guy alleging that Epstein was called his Wexner's boyfriend is sort of like a throwaway line, and you're like, wait, hold on, what's up? And there's a couple other moments like that where you're like, wait, can you pause there? But I would imagine they acknowledge, like the last episode is really, sorry, I'm jumping around.
No,
but the last episode is really interesting in the way that they acknowledge the conspiracy theories.
Yeah. At one point, they have a bunch of the victims. I mean, and this has been alluded to or stated outright in episodes before, although never followed up on. But in the 4th episode, they have, I believe, a 2 or 3 different victims talk about how he had his whole place wired up with cameras. And of course, we know that he did. We also know that he wired up Leslie Wexner's house. And then they outright say, like, oh, well, this is, you know, I mean, it's the obvious thing to think of. This was to blackmail people. But that's a huge implication, right? Like that in itself is an incredible crime. And on one hand, like, there's essentially no way to really follow up on that because we don't know, you know, the list of people he blackmailed is not released. One can assume it's some of the people that were involved with him, like the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. But it's never followed up on. That's such a huge tantalizing line there, and they don't really like. I don't know. I was a little confused by the decision not to really follow that line. I think at least a little further.
And they do the whole like, you know, History Channel or like True TV or whatever those, you know, cable channels are that do these kind of shows. And they have like all the TV monitors and ooga booga, blackmail, crazy, and you know, the effects. It's all really corny, which is really frustrating too, especially when like you're dealing with a pretty serious subject.
I see the need for visuals, but yeah.
Yeah, it's so cheesy though. The opening credits are so dorky. Yes. Ugh, that's not, anyway. But so they kind of like it's in the like toward the end of the final episode, and they just are like, and it was very clearly a blackmailing scheme. And you're like, wait, hold on, I thought he was a Svengali acting on his own, manipulating everyone, and now you're telling me that he was involved in a high level blackmail scheme, and you're talking about the Acosta deal and basically alluding to the fact, I think correctly, that there was coordination with the feds to kind of like silence the victims.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, there are celebrities mentioned, right? Like at one point in the 3rd episode, a guy who works on the island, I think his name's Steve Scully, who mentions a few things that I found really interesting. He's a guy who like did maintenance and electronics, and he's, I believe, interviewed before and mentioned this fact. But Epstein wanted a private cellular network on the island, which I think there's a lot that can be read into that as well. But he describes seeing naked little girls. He's described seeing surrounding a naked man who he doesn't name, and then describes basically Prince Andrew getting intimate with a very young girl. And
that whole interview was really gross.
Well, he also says that he saw Bill Clinton, and then he didn't see anything. He said he saw Bill Clinton with no one else on the island. The implication being there also no Secret Service. And then the documentary cuts to Virginia Jeffrey saying that that some of the people on the island, not all men took part. I saw people on the island for lunch and dinner. They didn't hang out. And to be clear, Virginia Jeffrey has never claimed that Bill Clinton she's actually explicitly said that she did not see Bill Clinton engaged in sexual acts with anybody. But I was a little, that jump cut right there, I don't know if that's what a jump cut is, but that cut made me jump. Because I was like, that is a very, I don't know, it's a thoughtful placement of that cut.
Yeah, I think that they were kind of like, being careful with that. I will say that guy's interview, that there were two interviews that really didn't sit right with me, and that was one of them. Yeah. The way he kind of talked about how much he saw and like why he didn't do anything, and then he says he finally quit when someone pointed out that he had 2 young daughters.
That story sounds fake to me.
Yeah, of course it's fake. I don't know. The whole thing didn't sit right. I really didn't like that, actually.
It's like, sorry, you witnessed like years of child abuse on this island without saying anything, and then the pool guy comes by and is like, "Oh, you have a 13-year-old." Like, damn, that's crazy. I'm sorry. This guy thought about the fact that he had 2 teenage daughters probably at least one of the times when he saw teenage girls being molested by a fucking royalty. Right? And so it's like, I'm sorry, nobody. Like,
I don't know. Men are incredibly good at compartmentalizing things.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But what was the other one?
The other one was the woman. What was her name? Haley.
Yeah.
Who basically was a recruiter. And to be clear, and of course she was recruited to Epstein's Palm Beach mansion when she was a child. And then she says that he basically, in the massage room, asked her to do stuff. She said, absolutely not. And he said, okay, well, if you're not going to do anything, then I want you to bring girls here and I'll give you $200, right? So, yeah. And this is kind of what they start to call the kind of Ponzi scheme, sexual Ponzi scheme that he sets up, where he has all these different, or pyramid scheme, excuse me, where he has all these different girls kind of acting as, which is absolutely true, of course, we know this. Girls, he would recruit girls to then become recruiters of other girls who would recruit other girls, and et cetera, to come to his mansion. There was a way that she talked about this, and I don't know. I just found it all a bit unsettling.
Yeah,
I don't know
see what you're saying there.
And it's not because I just think that I don't know. I don't really know how to say this.
Well, you can just say you found it.
Yeah, I don't think that these things are black and white, and I'm not suggesting that they are. And I think it's okay for them to not be black and white. I'm personally very comfortable, well, probably too comfortable in gray areas. But there's a way in which I think she tries to absolve herself almost too much. And maybe that's her own stuff. I don't know if this is an inappropriate thing to say. I don't know.
But I know what part you're talking about. And I do too, but it's also, I consider also how malleable kids are,
Absolutely. I mean, I think she has a line where she's like, I was the 16-year-old and he was the adult man. And yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
But it's just in terms of culpability, obviously Jeffrey Epstein was the one who molested, even leaving that aside, it's a difficult issue with teenagers or kids or whatever. and that I have zero answers for, but like I
Yeah,
can
me
understand why they
neither.
do it. Because I knew people who did, not like in a sex crimes way, but I know people who did pretty bad stuff when we were kids. And that they essentially did it because they were manipulated to doing it, or various other reasons, sometimes economic reasons. And I've seen them grapple with that sort of stuff as we got older, and it's I don't know. It's a complicated. I think you're totally right to say it's a black and white, but it's not black and white, and I really get why that made you uncomfortable too. It made me uncomfortable as well.
Well, that being said, I will say there were a couple funny details that I want to mention just as we wrap this up. Do you have any other big things you want to talk about?
No, there's a few details I also want to mention, but let's see if ours coincide.
Okay. One,
Uh-huh.
what the fuck is Tim Kaine doing in this documentary?
With the man Tim Kaine, Tim Kaine in the membrane, Tim Kaine in the brain.
Okay, that was one of my details. I'm sorry, you couldn't find. I understand that he questioned Acosta about Epstein.
Oh God,
But
come
it's
on,
like,
who cares?
you couldn't find exactly. It's like you don't need to interview him. Like you couldn't find a guy who was more than 1 degree separated from Jeffrey Epstein. Like, come on, man. He was one of Jeffrey Epstein's friends, running mates. Like, he was on the Epstein campaign.
I just also resent the filmmakers. It's like, man, I've totally forgotten about this Joker, and you're putting him back on my TV screen. That's also they threw Christian Gillibrand on there and Alyssa Milano, and I was like, all right, come on, guys, this is too much for me.
Yeah, get this out of here.
Also, okay, so in episode 4, they address the quote unquote suicide, and they talk about what happened in the MCU.
Yeah.
And yet there is no mention of our friend Nicholas Tartaglione.
Zero mention, zero Tartaglione shoutouts. They even got that motherfucking what's his name? The forensic fucking who's the guy who cuts you up?
Michael Baden.
They got Michael Baden's ass in there, who's like, you don't need to mention him. And then there's no Tartaglione? It's bullshit.
We need justice for Mr. Tortellini.
Well, I will say he did kill 4 people, I believe, rather brutally in his backyard.
Well, I mean rhetorical justice, and by that I mean I would like to see. First of all, this is
I
a
do
muscle
wanna see
man.
more pictures
I
of him,
want
yes.
him on the screen. Now, it is unclear to me whether or not he would fit on the screen.
You would have to get a lot.
So
I do not have
perhaps
a
that
large
was the
TV.
consideration. I would be interested to hear that explanation. Maybe they could not physically fit him in a room.
Yeah, that's possible. That's possible. He also might have killed the first 2 cameramen they sent. One thing I want to mention is that, and he's used this trick before. Well, actually, there's 2 Dershowitz things I want to mention. Dershowitz, by the way, is
God.
interviewed in this documentary. Listeners or Dersh watchers out there, my fellow Dersh watchers, will know
Dershheads?
that he never turns down an interview. He will go on.
No.
He's on. I mean, he literally any TV show. It's funny.
We could
actually,
probably get him on this podcast.
Absolutely. I think he was on a podcast with that guy Ian Fidance in New York.
Ugh.
We could get him on, but he's also on Tucker Carlson like every other week, which but I don't know what noise I just made there, but both those guys can suck my dick. Anyways, he says at one point, like as if to disprove that there was a conspiracy revolving around the sort of secret meetings that took place beyond the court case. The outcome of this case, whether people agree with it or disagree with it, doesn't require a conspiracy between government officials and wealthy people. Everything we negotiated for had to be approved by Acosta, by the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division in Washington, by the Deputy AG of the U.S., and ultimately by the Attorney General of the U.S. You just named more government officials that were in the conspiracy. You can't just say it wasn't a conspiracy. Look how many government officials were involved. That does not convince me.
Every time Dershowitz tries to say something that exculpates him, he inevitably implicates 10 other people.
Exactly. Yeah, he's the classic rat.
What did
another
he say?
thing-
He had a really funny thing where he was like, I don't have underage sex.
Yes.
I've never had underage sex. I didn't even have underage sex when I was underage. And you're
So
like,
he's-
what?
He's said that before. I can tell that he thinks it's like one of his lines that's so convincing because I think like it just in the mind of a manipulator like myself. He thinks he's saying that because he's like, if I am sort of degrading myself like this, people will think I'm telling the truth. Like if I'm,
You
if I'm-
think?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think he thinks it's like a airtight argument.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
he thinks it's like he's saying that like I think
Like,
he thinks
can't
it's
fight
clever.
this logic.
Exactly. I think he thinks it's clever, but also like a really. He thinks it's funny, but also clever. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
it's
like the
saying-
Shapiro destroying with facts and logic.
Exactly. He's dumb, but not stupid. Like I've always said. His teeth are also fucked up. Which, by the way,
Oh, that was
I
horrible
also
to look at.
yeah. I have no disrespect to fucked up teeth. As many listeners know, I am a tooth man through and through. Have it's it's believe me, if you got fucked up teeth, I'm one of you. I understand. However, this man is rich. And if you're
Yeah,
rich,
fix your teeth.
fix the teeth. The first thing I did when I got my first paycheck when I got sober, fix the teeth. Unfortunately, that did end in a 3-year tooth spiral for me. Anyways, I think one of the things that like really struck me about this documentary was the difference between like this documentary and what independent investigators can do is that I don't think that they really can. Like, we're complaining about them. We're not really complaining. Just pointed out that they're like, there's things that they didn't say. But we're also acknowledging that they probably can't say some of those things, right? Like they are constrained at a certain level by Netflix, by not being able to like reach conclusions on their own, by basically just like having to go from interviews. And I think that's like the big difference between something like this and something like us, right? Is like we are, like reporters can't say like, oh yeah, Alan Dershowitz is a pedophile allegedly.
Yeah, we're
But, like-
protected by the law, the ironclad laws of podcasting.
Which is that we put ourselves in the comedy tag in the iTunes podcast thing, which legally means that we're not the news and you can't sue us.
I don't think this is how any of that works.
Believe me, my lawyer told me about it. Alan Dershowitz.
Wait, can I mention one last thing? This is kind of dark, but it really is like burned in my brain.
Yeah.
So there's like and I kind of hate myself that this is like stuck in my brain because it is from one of the victims' like
Yeah.
things, but I couldn't stop thinking about it, which is that when she was in the massage room with Jeffrey asked her to like pinch his nipples
Yes.
and like turn them as hard as she could
Yeah. Just yeah, yes.
to the point of him.
Yes. I found that incredibly bizarre.
Okay. It's like burned in my brain.
Yeah, it's fucked up. They do mention, I will say, for egg watchers out there, they do mention his egg-shaped penis. I gotta mention. So there is, we alluded to this earlier, just talked about this briefly earlier. There is a phenomenal, well, not phenomenal. There's a good amount of unseen pictures and video in this. I hadn't
yes.
seen the actual video of most of his testimony because the Palm Beach Police Department, I believe it was them, put some of it on their website, but the files were like they just didn't work.
Right.
So a lot of this is out there, but you like literally can't watch it. And so it was good to see him squirm and get mad when like that lawyer, Bradley Edwards, I gotta say, he did write a book about Epstein. I cannot fucking remember what it's called. But it's the book I have it. It's by Bradley Edwards. It's about Jeffrey Epstein. It seems to be the only Epstein book so far that's worth a shit because it's actually written by somebody involved with it. And not just somebody who's...
And he's a lawyer for the victims.
Yeah, and Maria spoke really highly of him. He seems to be sort of beloved by all the victims. He's just like some lawyer down in Florida who they went to.
Yeah, Jeffrey gets real uncomfortable with his questions, especially a couple questions stuck out in my brain. There was one where they asked him, if he has always had a fetish for younger women.
Yep.
And Jeffrey gets like noticeably like
Heated.
riled up. He
Yeah.
gets like pissed off. And the other one was when he asked him if he had ever been molested as a child.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah. The at one point he asks if about the 3 12-year-old girls that I believe Jacques Brunel. Or
Yes,
Jean-Luc
he gets
Brunel
really
delivered.
pissed about that.
He really doesn't like that, and I think that's because I believe it was Virginia that supplied that information to the lawyer, and I think it's like once that was out there, it's over. You know what I mean? Like because that is you can I can tell he's thinking he can come back from teenagers, but he can't come back from 12-year-olds. Like it's over for him. But you know his lawyers. Every single question, by the way, his lawyers are like, "This is harassment," which
Yeah, and he just pleads the fifth on all of them.
yeah, and a bunch of other ones. I don't even remember. The 4th, I think the 14th. He's
No, the
pleading a lot
6th
of
and the
amendments.
14th.
My
yeah.
man is tossing out amendments like pepperonis on a pizza.
The Amendment King, they call him.
Amendment King. Jesus. Well, thank you all so much for joining us in the first and, if I have my way, only TrueAnon movie review episode.
Yes. You know what? I am going to say my official Rotten True Tomatoes.
What? Rotten
Review.
Tomatoes. Yep.
Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving it a splat.
You giving it a splat?
I'm giving it a 55%, but I'm going to say it's a half splat.
I'm gonna give a half splat too. Because it's like it's if Jeffrey
It's
Epstein.
unsatisfying.
I will say yeah, it's not as satisfying as a full splat, but I can't give it a full splat because it's got the victims in there at least.
Yeah, I know.
so-
half splat.
Half tomato for the victims, splat for the omissions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. My
That was
name
fun,
is.
Brace.
Oh yeah, I had a blast. I actually that was not as hard as I thought watching 4 hours of TV.
Yeah,
What,
dude.
is this like the 5th time I've mentioned that I don't watch much TV?
Yeah, we
It's-
get it. Oh,
I'm
we
not
get it. You
doing a
like
thing.
books.
No,
oh,
dude,
you
I'm
like
not
to
reading
read
books either.
Oh, I don't know TV. I don't even like it. What is that? I don't know. I'm just like a book guy. I'm kind of weird. I like records. I like books. I'm just like a little indie, little alt. I don't know. Put your gun down, Brace.
I will ice you through the TV screen. No, it's not that. I'm just too busy, doing the modeling stuff.
Yeah, model trains.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, hell yeah, model trains. You're damn right.
Okay.
Sometimes 4 or 5.
No.
So my name is Brace Ebert. Liz is unable to speak, but
I can speak. Let me speak. Stop silencing women.
Well, I'm really just trying to silence women. Women are cool. Woman.
All right, I'm Liz.
We are joined by producer and music guy, Young Chomsky. And that's... Don't you fucking interrupt me! I was doing the silky smooth voice thing.
Do it.
And that's TrueAnon. That was a weird one.
Yeah, man.
Play us out, baby.
I don't want to now.
Okay.
I'm gonna make you stay on. We're gonna keep going.
You have to do this. You have to do this.
You guys, I can tell Brace is getting agitated and really wants to go, so we're gonna keep him on.
I don't really want to go. I have to do something after this.
Bye-bye.